Welcome to the Abtrac office, and I'm just logging into Abtrac now. You can see we've got these little widgets on the main screen here. We've got different menus up along the top here. The entire thing is cloud-based, so all you need is a web-capable device and you're away. I'll start by talking about entering clients, contacts and projects. A client is obviously an entity for whom you do work. A contact is another entity who maybe works for you or is just a contact you want to keep within Abtrac because you refer to them as part of using Abtrac. I'll move on and look at the search screen. Here you see all the entities with whom we do business. So you set yourself up as an entity because you want to record annual leave and sick leave and public holidays, and you can see down here that you can have a variety of job codes. Basically we say to our clients, if you can articulate how your coding structure needs to work, Abtrac can probably already do it. Within Abtrac you can also have third parties I alluded to before. They are the contacts that I'm seeing up here on that menu, and a contact would be someone to whom you outsource work. I can tell we've got one here because we have no current projects for them. I'll go and play with one particular client. And across the top of the grid here I've just typed in a bit of this person's name. I'll look at the client here. The client name is appearing many times because we have many current projects on the go for them. Clicking into the client screen, all you need is the name, but you can optionally put other data into these fields here. In fact, Abtrac automatically gives it a create date, and it'll automatically give it a system code which you can overwrite if you want to. This particular client of ours is managed out of this particular office of ours, and we can see that they're a current client, they're billable as opposed to someone for whom we're just doing proposals. These fields over here are optional as well, so this is the person within your company who looks after this client. They may be the person who brought the fee into the practice, they may be a director level person, they're usually a senior person because at the project level the project managers might be different, but if something goes wrong with a particular project it gets escalated up to the client manager. A particular client might have multiple branch offices of their own. We can stack them up here, as many as you like, and you can choose them, as you can see, by clicking on these little grey bars. It expands the relevant address. Similarly, a particular client might have multiple people working for them. We've got Judith, she's the CEO, she operates out of Sydney. We also have Kevin down here operating out of Brisbane, so if I send an invoice to Kevin, if we address it to Kevin, it'll be addressed to the Brisbane branch office at which he works. If the client's name is Smith, Mr. and Mrs. J up here, then you can have invoice defaults. And an example might be the client's called Smith, Mr. and Mrs. J, but the invoice will be sent to the Smith Family Trust or possibly to the Smith's lawyer of a totally different name. We've got two special rates here at the client level. We can also go down to the job level and indeed to the sub-job, stage, task or phase level. But at this level we can say we can have employees specific rates for a particular client. That's essentially where you have a corporate rate being a discounted rate or a premium rate different to the standard rates for each of the employees that you would have set up under the employee maintenance screens. Similarly, you can have different activity rates. So you say if someone is travelling on a job for this client, they charge a different rate than if they're on-site working or in the office working. But just to repeat, all you need is the name. All of these other fields and screens are optional. Moving now to the project for the client, you can see that we've got all the current projects down here. You can see alphas and numerics. Normally in one company they would have a consistent project code structure, but for demonstration purposes we've got multiples. Some of these projects are still current, some of them have been archived and are no longer current. I'll play with one particular project here. For the client, all you needed was the name. For the project, you need a few more bits of information. Automatically, Abtrac will generate a code of some sort. Now, some of our clients will set up Abtrac to say, when you generate a new project, in fact, initially, don't make it billable, give it a proposal number of something, for example, 5,000, and later on, when it becomes billable, it'll then get the next project code off the rank, but the proposal number will remain as it was before it was billable. The project description can be whatever you like, and again, automatically Abtrac puts in a create date. All these other fields and the data in them is optional, and wherever you've got a drop-down field, these are all maintainable through the maintenance screens here. So for example, we do have project status, project type. Towards the bottom we've got work source, we've got referred from, etc. All of these fields are maintainable by the administrator so that others can pick them from the list. They cannot anecdotally type something into there. Project status, for example, can be used back in the search screen, where instead of just searching for one particular client, I might go and search for all the clients or projects, for example, where the project is not yet confirmed. And so then I can get on the phone and find out where all those proposals, where have they gone to. You can also run reports, for example, by project type. So what's the revenue we've earned from all the risk management projects, different to light industrial, or estimating all the different projects on which we've been on a retainer as opposed to charge up, for example. Down the bottom, if Abtrac is being used in a company that has multiple offices, you can say this particular project of ours is being managed out of this particular office of ours. Now within this page here and a few other pages within Abtrac, there are some administrative settings, and you can control, in addition to the three fields that have little asterisks, you can also determine which other fields you want to be mandatory. For example, come into here and say, like, I want to make the office field a mandatory field, so you have to pick one of these offices when you're entering a new project. Before someone saves it, if that's the case, it'll say an office is required. A particular project might have its own unique billing requirements. The client might say, if you want to be invoiced for this project, you have to address it to a different entity. So I can do that here. The client might say, if you want to be paid, you have to put a purchase order on it. And indeed, if it's a big client, they might say, we also have our own internal project number that has to go on there. Over here, we have a fee for the project. The fee is a quoted fee. That little tick tells me that. We haven't asked the client for any deposit up front, but this can be used to warn people if they're putting time against the project and there's no deposit paid. It'll warn them about that. And once the deposit is paid, it'll also warn people if they try and generate an invoice for this project. It'll say, remember, the client has paid $3,000 deposit or whatever it was. A lot of our clients will also track jobs of a certain work value. So their fee is $57,000 for this particular client on this particular project. We might say the work value is maybe $1 million. They'll track jobs of a certain size because that's their area of specialty or their niche. Down over here, we have a timesheet warning threshold. That will do two things. One is, as people enter time against this project, once you exceed whatever percentage you put in here, it'll pop a message to people as they're entering time and disbursements to say you're now on the last 20% of the fee once you've exceeded that threshold. It will also send an email to people who are in this list here under project people. It'll send an email to anybody who's been added to the list as an employee of Abtrac, and we can say this person receives email alerts. So this person will come back to work from wherever they've been. They'll have an email alert saying project number 172014 has exceeded the threshold that was set. Back in the project billing details screen, towards the bottom, you can also have specific invoice terms, not only for the client themselves, but also for individual projects. So you might say this particular project gets a 60-day invoice, whereas another one might get a 7-day invoice, both for the same client. And you can put it in here, and as with other things to do with the invoice settings, once it's in here, you can forget about it. Abtrac will automatically bring through whatever you've entered. The fee of $57,000 can be made up of what we call stages or phases or tasks. Part of setting up Abtrac, you can say we don't call them stages, we call them phases. You might say we don't call them projects, we call them jobs. You can change that yourself as you're setting up Abtrac. But down here we've got some quasi-generic stages that people might propose on a fee agreement letter or a contract to a client. We've got some consulting up front. We're doing a very special report. In the course of that, there's going to be some travel. There's going to be travel there as well. Perhaps it's travel, perhaps it's something else. Part of doing the report, we're outsourcing some work to a sub-consultant. And down the bottom here is part of doing the original quoted work. We've found something extra. We've gone back to the client. We've told them it's going to be another $25,000 at an hourly rate, and they've obviously agreed to it. Just as you can have a threshold warning on the project in total, you can also put a threshold warning against any particular stage or phase of the project as well. If you do have start date end dates for a particular project, then you can generate a little cash flow forecast. Were we to bill monthly, this is how the cash would flow for this particular project. So some of our clients will print this out and give it to their clients so they know what's happening. And then across all the projects, you can run a report to say this is the likely cash flow looking ahead X number of months based on as far as you want to go out. So people will do that looking ahead several months. They can look at it from the fees and disbursements perspective. I can also look at it from the resource requirements perspective, and again across this project and better across all the projects we can look ahead, so it will come this particular month we need more staff or we need to go and find more work. Moving further down, we've got project-specific rates. We can also keep a register of documents against this project, being the fee agreement letter, being plans for the project. In a register of documents, Abtrac doesn't keep the documents themselves within it. It has a URL or a UNC link to it. They might be in Dropbox or a shared folder or somewhere on the server. You can also keep a project diary. These are events against the project that people will routinely enter for whatever reason. So they might say, today, entered by me, there are work health and safety issues, the client phoned and said go ahead with stage 3. You put a diary note in here and then you can forget it, and it saves you embarrassingly saying to other people, look, I'm very sorry, I meant to tell you that earlier. It also means that others can come into this page and they can also be briefed on whatever they need to know. Arising from various quarters, people have been coming to Abtrac for some years saying it's fine knowing what happened in terms of time yesterday, last week, last month. We need to know what's happening looking ahead next week and next month. A lot of our clients have become very prescriptive and they've broken the projects down into work items. I only have one work item here, but a lot of people will say, right, the project has 5 or 6 stages against it, and each of those stages might be made up of 10 or 12 separate little work items being little pieces of work to be done. And this becomes part of their quality assurance checklist. So here we've got site meetings, maybe there's 2 or 3 of them involved. They take 8 hours in total, and we've used that to micromanage the project. In fact, what I've done here is I've actually assigned some of those 8 hours to 2 separate people. Annette has to go out and do a site meeting of some sort for 2 hours due by then, and I have to go out and do it, and it's going to take me twice as long, and it was due by then. All the work items that you're working on have what we call a state. Some of our interest because they're either new or in progress or not yet completed. Others are no longer of interest because they're on hold, cancelled or whatever, and you can make up those words yourself and you can track the items of interest. So once something's completed or cancelled, it drops off the shopping list of things to be done. If they haven't yet dropped off, then you can manage them all through what we call bulk manage. I can come in here. I can say show me all the projects for which I'm responsible and that are due by a certain date. So typically people will do this monthly. They might say looking ahead, these are all the things I have to get done by a certain date. So work item management is really breaking the job down into little minutiae, and it just means if you've given someone a 12-hour piece of work, they know it's got to be done within 12 hours. You can track it. You can also track the due by dates to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. Back in the project now, we've probably completed this project setup to an adequate level, so we'll finish by looking at a couple of extra things. One is a print screen where you can print a PDF, again part of the QA. You might look at this and you say, look, we need to just confirm the spelling of that. I think that's spelled Shifley wrong, for example, but this is a couple of pages just saying this is what we know about this project. Second thing is some people will export everything they know about the project and everything they know about the stages. They'll use that to produce their fee proposal letter or their contract or their short form agreement. Not by rekeying everything into Word or some other standard template, but by mail merging in the data that's already in Abtrac. Now this project's been going for a little while and it's telling me there are 2 invoices that have been raised. It's telling me that we wrote on $320 on that invoice for April. I can click on here and have a look at the time and cost that was associated with that invoice. I can see straight away, we've just done a copy and paste to get the data into here, but I can see straight away there was $4,480 worth of time put on the tab. We said to the client, we're billing me at a certain rate and we're recovering that much. So we've written on a certain amount there. The next line down, which was for use of personal car, we've just charged it at whatever cost it was. And you can keep a track, a record, an audit trail if you like, relating the invoice to the actual job costs against it. The difference between the invoice amount and the job costs assigned to that particular amount is the write-on or write-off. You don't need to process a separate journal or an adjustment of any sort, nor worse, fiddle the actual timesheet entries to get the invoice values that you want. There's also a little page here. It would show the time and disbursements line playing ducks and drakes with the invoices as you billed ahead or were billing behind, and the difference between the 2 lines is what you could bill to net off this project. If I'm interested in looking at the stage level, then I can see, just looking at the top level here, these were my various budgets. This is what I've actually put against each of those tabs. There's in fact nothing unbilled at this stage. This is what I have billed, and this is whether I wrote on or wrote off. There's quite a lot of little bits of information that a project manager who's allowed to come in and look at it can very quickly be put up to speed with what's happening with their projects. That probably concludes setting up clients and projects. The next section will be looking at entering time and disbursements, then we'll look at invoicing, and prior to that we might in fact have looked at some reports so that we do know what to invoice.